Now, while Ole Miss just hit 7 commits in this 2026 class, they're sitting number 4 right now with 30 transfer portal guys. Now, let's bring our guy in, Chase Parham. Let's talk a little bit more about this Ole Miss recruiting class for our newest writer on our Ole Miss team site. Chase, what's going on?
How you doing?
Man, listen, let's jump straight into it. We know that Lane Kiffin typically is on the pressure cooker, but he's done a tremendous job of flipping his roster. Now, how is he so quickly to get the chemistry and continuity going with flipping his roster year in and year out with the transfer portal?
He's really 3 for 4 doing it. You look at since the portal really became in play for 2021, and he's been excellent in 2021, 2023, and 2024 when it comes to those seasons. 22 was kind of a lag. I think it was a learning experience. That's the team for Ole Miss. It started 8-1, finished 8-5, and he didn't brag on them. And Lane Kiffin's a lot of things, but he's typically honest, especially in press conferences and whatnot. And you can tell when he likes the makeup of his roster, when he doesn't. And the 3 of the 4 years, he's really liked it, and that's shown on the field. Ole Miss 3 double-digit win seasons over the course of the last 4, and he does it a couple different ways. And it starts with discipline. The Grove Collective, Ole Miss's NIL arm, and Kiffin, they put valuations on guys. They don't stray from that. They do okay financially. They've got enough to make it work, obviously, but at the same time, they are very efficient on knowing when to get away from someone, when to not go past the value that they have. I think they focus on a lot of different things and a lot of different elements when it comes to not just talent or taking the best available, but who fits inside the program, who fits inside the one thing they're trying to do. There really is a Moneyball element to it for Ole Miss. And then the other part is they've got a lot of returning guys that buy into the system. What you see across the country is it's not just about the guys coming in and acting a certain way. It's coming in and there being a standard to be set. And in the past years, you've had Jackson Dart, a 3-year starter at quarterback, going into obviously finishing up last season. J.J. Pegues, a big defensive lineman, came in from Auburn, but he was an Oxford native. He'd been at Ole Miss for a while. Those guys were able to create the situation for the transfers to come in and go from there and fit that standard. And I think that's been very important for Lane Kiffin. It's always important to have the nucleus in place for returners, and that helps everybody else as you move forward.
Chase, you said in our pre-production meeting, this would be a stability year for Ole Miss. Why is that?
Because I think that they've had the last year, Ole Miss treated the year as sort of not a one-off, but the expectation was on the playoff. They didn't make that. And they talked about the last dance all year. And everybody kind of debated, what does that mean? And the point was for all those guys who had come back to school to make the playoff and make a run at a championship. And they failed in that way. They didn't do it. And I think now you've got Lane Kiffin doing this national podcast circuit, talking about how happy he is to be in Oxford, how his daughter helped him, find a lot of stability in his life. He hasn't had alcohol in, I think, 4 years at this point. He's really settled into this program. And this year is not about a one-off. It's not about what can just this team what can they do? Can they achieve a major bowl game? Can they get into that college football playoff? It's about setting the standard of just where the program is, where it's not just a team. It's a program for Lane Kiffin. You've got a switch at quarterback. You've got Austin Simmons now calling the plays or running the plays for the Rebels at this point. And I think that with that being the case, this is sort of about program, not team, and Lane putting a different stamp on setting up his rosters and setting up what is now completely his program. It's not about can Ole Miss do something one time. Again, 3 of 4 double-digit win seasons. It's can they stay in that upper echelon of college football? And if you can do it this year with the amount of turnover that's happened, I think you're setting a really good progress for the future.
Now, you said everything great and everything sounds good. Now he's in his comfort zone. But with comfort, we know what comes with that. The ability to win pressure games. Is this the most pressure that Lane's going to feel since becoming the head coach at Ole Miss?
Only in the way that they need to continue to create that standard you talk about. I think Las Vegas set it at 8.5 wins or something like that for Ole Miss. And I do think they need to win at least 8. You've got to stay in the conversation. For Lane Kiffin, the pressure that comes with this season, schedule's pretty tough. Same schedule as last year, obviously, but they flipped home and away. The goal is to remain in the conversation for the college football playoff and in kind of the consciousness of college football heading into November. Now, pressure in any other way? No, not whatsoever. I mean, Lane Kiffin's Q rating is through the charts. He's loved in Oxford. He has been everything for Ole Miss that they hoped and dreamed when it came to that. I did a profile with Keith Carter, Ole Miss's athletics director, on 24/7 a couple of weeks 24/7 Sports a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about hiring Lane and what he kind of hoped for going in. And Lane has moved past all of those markers for the most part and been even beyond what Keith was hoping for. So no, there's not pressure in that way, but there is pressure to simply not let the program fall back. You get the quarterback change. You're losing all those big names, Walter Nolan and Princely and everybody from last year. Keep that standard where it is and still, win games and stay in this thing as the season plays on.
Yeah, speaking of pressure, you spoke about Austin Simmons, the new starter right now. We understand when you're the first-time starter, there's a little bit of pressure that comes on it. And I don't think that the Heisman odds are doing any good. He's right now sits at plus 3,300 in the Heisman odds, 12th right now. But most college fans don't know about Austin Simmons. What would you say they need to know about this young man?
He got a lot of mileage out of one series against Georgia last year. The Rebels beat the Bulldogs in Oxford. Jackson Dart got banged up for a series. Simmons brings him in, drives them right down the field, throws the pass in there. They score. They end up beating the Bulldogs there in that game. And that set the expectations that were already high to a completely different level. He's an incredibly smart kid. He moved up 2 years to graduate 2 years early. He finished with a GPA of 5.4, 5.5, something like that. Incredibly bright, incredibly driven. We've got a story coming out next week about the relationship with he and his father, where his father has sort of molded him into this quarterback prospect. He played baseball for the Rebels for 2 years. He was really good on the mound as a relief pitcher until he injured his elbow. But he's just got a ton of competitiveness about us. He is way beyond his years at this point. And while he's going to be a first-year starter, he's been in the program. He's learned under Charlie Weiss Jr., under Lane Kiffin, under Jackson Dart, and they're huge expectations. Now, are the expectations where they're on the screen, the 3,300 for the Heisman? That feels extreme. It feels like he's got a lot to prove because, look, there's going to be a learning curve. Lane Kiffin talks about it all the time. I think he is speaking to the fan base through the media at certain times where he talks about how much Dart was able to process in year three and to not put that expectation on Austin Simmons here in year one. It's going to be a different group. He's got a different set of wide receivers. He's going to have a different backfield. You've got to let Austin Simmons come into his own. So while the ceiling is high, the expectations are incredibly high, Ole Miss is not changing their overall expectations of the team. They still are trying to chase double-digit wins, chase that playoff. You're looking at a left-handed kid that's going to throw the ball. He's going to run well. He's going to make good decisions. He's going to make mistakes because all first-year quarterbacks do that. But there's no doubt that there is a ceiling and a really cool, interesting situation around Austin Simmons as he moves into the starting quarterback role for the Rebels.
Chase, you cover this team, and you know more about this team than anybody. Now, inside the program, there's a little bit of tidbit that we need to know. What would somebody need to know about the program from the inside, from that keen-eye view that you got?
I think it's what we talked about a little while ago, that this is sort of a stability move for Lane Kiffin. That Lane is known as the portal king, and you have all these monikers and these things come around. But he slowly built a really good, especially on the defensive side of the ball, nucleus through the high school level. And he's put an extra emphasis on high school recruiting here in the last 6, 12, 14, 15 months, somewhere in there. That defensive line was one of the best in the country last year. They led the country in tackles for loss. They were up there in quarterback sacks and pressures and all those things per Pro Football Focus and overall stats. And they got a lot of homegrown talent that's ready to sort of replace those guys, step in, and take that extra role, led by Edge Centurion Perkins, Jamarius Brown, Cam Franklin, former top 100 player out of high school. They really have done a good job fixing some of the defections, from whether it be graduation or draft or whatnot, with high school talent and homegrown players. It's not just about the portal; it's the mix. And where Ole Miss is trying to take that next step and be a little more of a stable program, because the portal's volatile. It's not always going to pan out the way you want. You're not always going to hit when you got to have somebody come in and play immediately. But the ability to go in there, get the high school talent, develop it, keep it, that's a big part of this too. I think that's where Lane Kiffin can kind of take the next step for creating that baseline for that program.
Chase, as we wrap this up, let's take a look at the schedule this year and just let's see, what are the realistic expectations right now with the schedule as you look at it?
I think I'm setting it at 8 or 9 wins. I think that's realistic. You look at what they've got there, and they've got some tough road games. That back-to-back stretch against Georgia and Oklahoma in mid to late October. You know that the Bulldogs are going to have that one circled after losing to the Rebels last year. You've got to deal with Norris Sellers in South Carolina. That 3-game stretch is going to decide where Ole Miss is sitting in this playoff picture in the second half of the season. And if you're Ole Miss, you like that those are coming on the back half. You give Simmons a little bit of room to grow, a little bit of ways to get settled into this season. For Ole Miss, it's not dropping one of the other games. It's, they've got that loss to Kentucky from last year that kept them out of the college football playoff. Go to Lexington and win. Don't lay an egg against Arkansas at home. See what happens against LSU, a really talented group there in Baton Rouge, or it's going to be in Oxford, but against that group from Baton Rouge. It's, can you manage the first half the way you're supposed to set up the back half to be big games, big crowds, and keep the expectations and the attention on Ole Miss? I think you're looking at that 8.5, 8 to 9 wins for the Rebels this season.
Well, Chase, thank you again for the great intel. To read more on Chase's work, keep your eye on Ole Miss. Be sure you stay locked into InsideTheRebels.com. Now, talking about and speaking about being locked in, let's lock in and welcome in Bud Elliott. Bud, let's keep this conversation going. You just heard about the prediction from Chase. What are your thoughts on the realistic expectation for Ole Miss this year?
So I think Chase, has it nailed. Of course, I mean, he covers them on a day-to-day basis. But if Austin Simmons plays way better than I think he will, then I think Ole Miss is about a lock to make the playoff. But if he just plays, with some regular ups and downs, if Ole Miss has done a good enough job scouting the transfer portal and bringing in all their new players, you see here on the screen, their schedule is pretty manageable. Now, I say that, and this team lost to Kentucky at home last year, a terrible Kentucky team, and it kept them out of the college ball playoff. They just took care of business against Kentucky. I think they're fine, even with that late season loss to UF, but they'll be favored in all the games with the exception of perhaps hosting LSU there on the left side of your screen. And then at the right side, I mean, Georgia, Oklahoma, both on the road. That'll be a little more difficult, but still, this is the team that'll probably be favored in 9 ball games. So I think expecting to win 8 or 9 is reasonable.